Hello, welcome to Baby Boomer Video Tales. My name is Jim. Back in August of 2019, I made a podcast called Third Valley and the Hotel. It was episode 30 in our audio podcast series. And the second half of that podcast, we talked about the old Grand Hotel there on the north side of the main street, sandwiched between Payne's Cafe and my Uncle Cliff's barber shop to the west, my grandpa's pool hall, and the Columbine Cafe on the east. Up there in the north central Colorado Rocky Mountains, my little old hometown, Granby, Colorado. I believe this old hotel was once called the James Peak Hotel, and it was built before 1905. Just a touch of history there to go along with our story. So let's get started on this episode called The Hotel. I'll be back with you in just a few
My
minutes after
hometown,
this.
when I was a boy, had two hotels there. There were older hotels, and they weren't like the motels that have sprung up around town and right outside of town. And there was one of the hotels that was next door to my grandpa's pool hall. In fact, it took up a big part of the block, and it was situated between my grandpa's pool hall and my uncle's barber shop. One of the hotels was named after the town, and one of the hotels was named after the county I lived in. And one of them, when I was young, I can remember it being open, and you'd walk by and you could see old men sitting in there reading a newspaper. There's also a little restaurant attached to it, and I was never allowed to go in there, so it was pretty much a mystery to me. As I got a little older, though, the place closed down, and you could still see the shades were open to the restaurant, and when you walked by, you could tell it was a little coffee shop type restaurant. But the hotel part was curtains were drawn and doors were closed, and it was just empty. When I became about a sophomore in high school, I believe, a friend of mine named Richard told my friend Wayne and I, Wayne being my best buddy all through school, about he knew a way to get into that old hotel, and we could goof around in there and explore, and it was spooky and it was exciting. And so he talked us into going, and I don't think it took much talking. We were all for going in and getting spooked and being excited. So we went into the alley behind the hotel, and he lifted a window and we crawled in. And Richard said, "Now, this is a scary place. We need to get some protection." So we had crawled in. Where we crawled in was like the kitchen area. Must have been for that little coffee shop. And so we took knives and big forks and meat cleavers and whatever, and one in each hand and went exploring, and it was amazing. Walked from the kitchen into the lobby area, and everything was just there. The chairs that I remember the little old men sitting in, reading their newspapers. It was dark and quiet, and we went upstairs to where the rooms were. And the one thing I really remember were there dead birds laying in the hallway. I have no idea how they got in, how they died. It looked like they were just hopping along and just fell over dead. Went into one of the rooms that faced the street. The shades were shut, but you could tell that the light was coming in the room, and it was really like the Twilight Zone. Well, a couple days later, we decided to go back again. So we went into the alley, crawled through the back window of the kitchen, got ourselves some protection, some knives and whatever, and explored some more. And it was just the greatest thing. And we started making plans. We could make a clubhouse of this. So I'm sure I wasn't 16 yet because we were on foot everywhere we went. And I think a 16-year-old wouldn't want to be making a clubhouse. He'd probably want something else. But we're naive enough and just a little crazy enough and 15-year-old enough. We went to school, and I remember telling a couple of the girls about it and telling them we were going to make a clubhouse and they want to join, and told them how we got in. And so I'm sure more than just a few kids knew about it. A couple of days later, we're going to go back in, start cleaning the place up, getting it ready for a clubhouse. Man, we might just take it over. I mean, they were just sitting there. Crawled in the window, got our knives and meat cleavers and big forks. We were loaded for bear. We walked into the lobby, and the lobby was dark, and all the chairs were there. And we were whispering, 'cause that's what we did in there. We whispered. And all of a sudden, a big figure came out from behind the chair, and we all screamed and threw our knives and our meat cleavers and our big forks up in the air, and we ran out and we got out that window lickety-split, and we all went home. We went home as fast as we could. Whatever monster was there didn't kill us. It was a close call. I was shaking. We started laughing. We were so nervous how we got away and we're never going to go back. So that evening, I remember my grandparents from New Mexico were there. They only visited us once a year at the very most. And so we were getting ready for dinner, and all of a sudden, Richard showed up at my door. He said, "Come outside, I got to talk to you." Went outside, and he proceeded to tell me that big monster had found him. And it was Vern, the town marshal. He had been laying in wait to catch us. Someone had called him and told us that some boys were crawling through that back window into that old hotel. Somehow he figured out Richard, and I don't know if Richard ratted us off or if Vern knew all three of us, and he was just making his rounds. He must have been at Wayne's house when Richard came and warned me, and my life was over. My life as I knew it was over. I might as well join the gypsies or run away to the circus, because my life as I knew it was over. I am in the biggest trouble I've been in my life. And to top it off, my grandma and grandpa are here. I'll disappoint everybody. I'll probably be disowned. It was a good life. I really liked it there at home. And now what am I going to do? Well, I couldn't eat my dinner, and I paced back and forth watching out the window and watching out the window and pacing and watching and pacing. And my mom kept saying, "What's wrong, Jim?" And I said, nothing's wrong. I paced and I watched, and the time drug on. And I wasn't enjoying my grandparents. And then all of a sudden, Vern pulled into the driveway. I don't know if I was ever so nervous in my life. Well, he came to the door, and I went back to my room thinking maybe, just maybe, it's something unrelated. A few minutes, there was a knock on my door, and I had to go out, explain to Vern what was going on. I remember looking at my grandparents, and they just were looking at me. They weren't shaking their head. They weren't smiling. They were just looking. I was guilty as charged, and I agreed with old Vern that I had done a bad thing. Well, we caused no damage in the place, and I'm not sure Vern even knew who to contact who owned the place. It had sat empty for a very long time. And I can't remember the punishment I had, and I know I got to still goof around with Richard and Wayne. A couple years later, they tore that old hotel down and built a very nice ladies' dress shop there. And all of the memories and all the old men sitting there reading their newspaper. And all the times I went by looking in the window of that restaurant, cafe. And all of the history of that old hotel were demolished and went away forever. I'm glad that we didn't tear anything up and that we didn't stab Vern when he came out from that chair. I'm glad that we were just some stupid little 15-year-old boys wanting to do a clubhouse and threw our weapons in the air and ran like a bunch of banshees. Run away, run away, run away. I'm glad I could tell this story because it was pretty exciting. I still don't know how the birds got in there. Forgiveness is a wonderful thing. My parents had to forgive me over and over and over and over and over again. I'd pull some stunts that, looking back, I can't even believe it. A lot of times I wasn't even meaning to. It just was happening. I'm glad I outgrew most of that.
That is our episode this week called The Hotel. It's amazing. I lived to tell about that one. I want to thank Steve Warden, Sandia Bruton, Rhonda Reynolds Myers, and GrandCountyHistory.org, and others that I may have failed to acknowledge there, for some great material for today's episode. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've arrived at our webpage, there are links to our audio podcast, our YouTube channel where you can find all of our podcasts and videos, our Facebook page, Baby Boomer Tales, and our Boomers General Store. Being kind is a high calling. I think everyone should try to follow that. Well, until next time, peace out.